No Braden Huff, no Graham Ike, no problem for Gonzaga on Saturday, once again proving this team has the best depth in the country.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the college football playoff, folks. It is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into all that action. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts today. All right, folks, we got some mailbag questions to get to close out the show. We'll talk Braden Huff's eligibility. We're going to talk a little bit about that ESPN Plus broadcast on Saturday night. I know many of you had some concerns about how that went. We'll get to that. Some other fun mailbag stuff to close out the show. But of course, we are leading the show talking about Gonzaga's 21-point road win on Saturday night in Seattle against the Redhawks. A much stronger performance for Gonzaga against this pesky Seattle U team, despite playing this game without not only Braden Huff, who we know is going to be out until late or mid-February, really at the earliest, maybe late January, but without Graham Ike. We found out an hour or so before tip time is going to be out, or was going to be out of that game with left ankle soreness. Gonzaga still rolls to a win. We'll talk about the good things, the bad things we saw in that game. We'll talk about our 5 keys to victory, how those things played out on Saturday at the Climate Pledge Arena. Again, Gonzaga's back-to-back 21-point road wins for the Zags after beating Washington State in Pullman on Thursday. Turn it around and beat Seattle in Seattle on Saturday. Both those games without star Braden Huff. He was tied as their leading scorer coming into that Washington State game. Graham Ike passed him in points per game after a strong performance against Wazoo. And then Graham Ike sat out the game on Saturday against Seattle due to ankle soreness. He's been dealing with his ankle stuff for a while now. Was dealing with it even during the Michigan game where he really struggled in that one. Ended up sitting out the North Florida game after scoring 28 points against Kentucky in Nashville. So at this point, it is considered day-to-day, truly. Just kind of depends on the swelling, things like that. Worth noting that Gonzaga's upcoming game on Wednesday will be against Pepperdine at home, one of the easiest games left on Gonzaga's schedule, if not the easiest game left on Gonzaga's schedule, due to it being at home and against a team that is the lowest ranked team on KenPom that Gonzaga has on the calendar. So possible that Ike sits in that game as well. Or if he does play, that he is severely limited and only plays, maybe a handful of minutes here and there to keep him fresh, especially now that him being at full strength is about as important as it could possibly be for Gonzaga, with us knowing that Huff is going to be out for a while, potentially the rest of the season, or at least up until the WCC tournament or through the WCC tournament, with the soonest possible return being mid to late February as it stands right now. So the starting lineup for Gonzaga in this game is Ismaila Diagne drew his first career start at center, Jalen Warley at the 4, and then Innocente, Miller, and Smith round out the starting 5. It was also reported before the game that Parker Jefferson, the 6'9" freshman for Gonzaga, who has been redshirting this season, was dressed and available. Now, he did not play, and just being dressed does not have any impact on his redshirt. So as long as he does not play for the rest of the season, he will still be a redshirt. This year will still not count against him eligibility-wise. If he were to play, the school would have to then apply to keep his redshirt, and the NCAA doesn't really like when you play late in the season. If you play a handful of games early and then miss the rest of the year, they tend to be pretty forgiving. But if you don't play for the first 2 months of the year, then suddenly play in January, they're probably not going to be as likely to grant said red shirt. So the Zags wisely tried to prevent playing Jefferson as in this game and didn't end up having to do so, but certainly a storyline to keep an eye on if Ike ends up missing any more time. And again, this goes down as a 21-point win for Gonzaga, but it's worth pointing out for those of you who missed it or were dealing with broadcast issues, this was pretty much like a 6 to 8 point game throughout. It was an 8-point lead for Gonzaga at halftime. had been closer than that for the majority of the first half. In fact, I think Gonzaga's largest lead was 9 points in the first half, but most of the half they were up by 4 to 6 points. And then the second half, they kind of maintained about an 8-ish point lead for the majority of the half. And then in the final 8 minutes, went on a pretty lengthy run, ended up pushing the lead all the way out to 20 plus points to secure what ends up being a comfortable road win for the Zags. The good things for Gonzaga in this game, Mario Saint-Supery had one of his best games, if not his best game, in a Gonzaga uniform. He was electric in this one. 20 points to lead all scorers, 4 assists, 2 steals, 7 of 10 shooting, including 4 of 6 from 3, knocked down a pair of free throws in 24 minutes as well. Gonzaga had to do things very differently offensively in this game. No EK, no Huff meant no real interior post presence. The Zags were not dumping the ball down to Ismaila Diagne. That was not what he was on the floor to do. The thing that Ismaila Diagne is very good at offensively is screen setting and taking up a lot of space and gobbling up offensive rebounds. He's a rim runner, screen setter. He is not a low post hub the way that EK and Huff are. So Gonzaga went into this game planning to run a lot of side-to-side ball screen actions, 4-out sets, where you have, because Warley is effectively a guard, as much as we label him as the team's power forward, he is a guard. And you had these offenses where you had 4 guards on the floor, Diagne in the middle, setting screens, clearing out space, and giving the guards room to operate, room to drive, room to get mid-range jump shots, all sorts of space that they don't typically have in Gonzaga's offense because the bigs are down low. This created a better game plan for somebody like Mario, who thrives in pick and roll situations, who thrives at attacking the basket that way. It also opened up space for Davis Fogle and for Tyon Grant-Foster. Gonzaga's new offense in this game is good for a lot of players on this team. I don't think that you can overall say that Gonzaga is better without EK or Huff. That would be a pretty ludicrous statement. They're all-American caliber bigs for a reason. But the adjustments this staff made, especially on a short turnaround from the Wazoo game, were outstanding. And it is clear that this team is capable of playing high-level basketball without the 2 bigs on the floor. Mario took advantage more than anybody else in this game. In the first half, it was mostly those little mid-range jumpers attacking the basket. In the second half, he found that outside shot and was just drilling shot after shot after shot. Every time the Zags needed a big bucket, it was Mario getting it done. Really nice performance from him. The Zags defense in this game was also spectacular. I don't believe Gonzaga is a better team without EK or Huff. I will reiterate that point, but I do believe they are better defensively. And that's not exactly a bold statement. EK is a good rebounder, but he's an adequate defender. Huff, borderline adequate defender. It's not his strength. He's an okay rebounder, decent defender, but the Zags are better with Ismaila Diagne and Jalen Warley on the floor defensively. They were better when Diagne played 20 minutes in this game. The other 20 minutes, the Zags' biggest player on the floor was either Noah Holland for 5 minutes at 6'9", or 6'7" Tyon Grant-Foster, or Jalen Warley, or Davis Fogle, Steel Venters. All those guys are listed at 6'7". They had to line up with 4, 6, 7 guys in Mario on the floor at the same time. They were not a big team in this game, but they had tenacity on the defensive end of the floor. Seattle had 18 turnovers and 19 made field goals. At the 2.5-minute mark in this game, they had the same number of field goals as turnovers. They made one more bucket, didn't turn it over, so we didn't get to use the fun fact that they had the same number of turnovers as field goals, but it was darn close. Zags had 14 steals in this game. That's the second most they've gotten all season long, behind that Southern Utah game where they had 18. Warley had 4 steals, Fogle had 3, and Achente, Grant-Foster, and Mario all had 2 each. The Zags had a 22-11 advantage in points off turnovers. And even when they weren't getting turnovers, Seattle U, when they would actually get shots up, well, they weren't knocking them down very often. Shot under 44% on 2-pointers, 14 of 32. Shot just 5 of 21 from 3, which is 24%. Seattle U was basically either turning the ball over or missing shots, and they were not getting rebounds. We'll talk about that more in the second segment. An unbelievable turnaround for Gonzaga on the glass in this game. It was a phenomenal defensive performance all across the board. And while Diagne was in foul trouble and was limited to only playing 20 minutes, which is something we're probably going to see from him if he ends up getting more playing time as the year goes on, he also was a load defensively. At 8 rebounds in this game, he blocked a shot. His blocked shot was on the second possession of the game. It was a dunk attempt from 7-foot center Austin Maurer for Seattle U. What a way to set the tone. Seattle comes into this game thinking, okay, we're playing a team that doesn't have their two starting bigs. We're going to attack down low. We're going to try to get easy buckets right around the rim. And on the second play of the game, the 7-foot center that you've never seen before swats a shot at the rim. That is a tone-setting move for Diagne that I think really had an impact on this game beyond just the single note in the stat sheet. I thought that was an important play for Gonzaga in this one. Davis Fogle was great coming off the bench in this game, 13.6 boards, 3 steals. He was 6 of 9 from the field in 24 minutes. He had one of my favorite plays of the game. He missed a shot at the rim. And then when they made they got the rebound, they tried to make an outlet pass. He stole the outlet pass, went back up at the rim, attacked, and scored. That's the kind of play that'll get you playing time. He can score 20 points against Southern Utah in the last 6 minutes of the game all he wants. And that's great. And Mark Few has said, hey, that's great. We love what he can do in those situations. But it wasn't earning him playing time. This is what earns you playing time. Not only making nice defensive plays, but the opportunity has to be there. The opportunity is there because the Zags are playing Tyon more at the 4. They're playing Warley at the 4 or the 5. They need some more minutes at the 3. Fogle's stepping into those minutes. But you make plays defensively. You work hard on that end of the floor. You get 3 steals off the bench. You make most of your shots. You don't take a bunch of dumb shots. He didn't do that. You're going to earn more playing time. This was a phenomenal performance from Davis Fogle. It was his best game. This was his best game for Davis Fogle, because I don't really care about him scoring 20 points in a game the Zags were winning by 60. That doesn't matter as much as scoring 13 points, grabbing 6 rebounds, and generating 3 steals against a team that nearly beat you a few weeks ago in Spokane. Really nice stuff from Davis. Warley was everywhere. Once again, it feels like a broken record at this point. He had 14 points. He had 6 boards, 4 assists, 4 steals. He was 5 of 10 from the field, but crucially 4 of 5 from the free throw line for Gonzaga. He played center and point guard in this game. Why not, right? Like, why not let him do that? He's capable of playing every single position on the floor, and he quite literally has to with Gonzaga's depth issues at this point. And I thought Ismaila Diagne gave the Zags some valuable minutes as well. I already kind of mentioned that. He's still raw, 3 turnovers and 4 fouls. That's going to be something that you're going to see from him at times this year, but he looked ready to go. I spoke to him after the game and kind of asked what the message from Graham and Braden were. And they just said, hey, yeah, they told me I was ready. They said, I know, you've played high level basketball. You've played in big arenas, over in Europe and Spain, like you are ready to do this. And I thought that, we saw the rawness, but I also thought we saw a kid who was ready to go. Like he was barking out orders at points. There was one time where he was yelling at Mario about something. And I was like, that's what you want to see. Like, Diagne's basically a freshman. He's a sophomore, but he's young for his age. He turned 19 last month. So he's young for a sophomore. He played very little as a freshman. Like he's pretty close to being a freshman. And he was out there commanding the team and leading stuff around. Like I thought it was a really nice performance from him as well. Also got to give a shout out. We got to see Noah Halan minutes. First half Noah Halan minutes. The Zags threw him out there in a pinch. He didn't really do anything, but that's fine. Like it's kind of good. It's always fun to see the walk-ons get those opportunities. The not so good stuff for Gonzaga in this game, they had 15 turnovers. That's pretty ugly. That's not the number you want to see there. It's kind of understandable when you consider the circumstance. They're running basically a brand new offense on less than 24 hours warning that they were going to have to do that. They were also running said brand new offense against the team that did a really good job against them defensively last time and is one of the best defensive teams in college basketball. Mario and Diagne each had 3 turnovers. Again, Diagne doesn't play very much, so that's kind of understandable. Smith had 2, Warley had 2, Venters had 2. It was a frustrating part of the game, but also one of those things that you just kind of got to chalk up to the circumstance at that point. Zags ended up shooting 33% from 3, which isn't horrible, 6 of 18, but Mario was 4 of 6. The rest of the team was 2 of 12. That was not an area of strength for Gonzaga in this game. I thought they settled for too many threes, particularly early in the second half. I think they had like five possessions in a row where they ended up shooting a 3. I don't know why they were really insistent on doing that coming out of halftime. It was not a good game from them from the perimeter. Inocente went 1 of 4. Smith went 0 of 2. And then the biggest culprit was Adam Miller. Really rough game from Adam Miller. And he's a player who typically finds ways to impact the game even when he's not scoring. And he just didn't in this game. He was 0 of 7 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. He only played 14 minutes. That was part of it, is the Zags they didn't play Miller or Venters very much in this game. Venters played just 13 minutes. He was 1 of 1 with a 3. He had 2 turnovers. One of them, he caught a pass standing out of bounds. Mark Few screamed at him after that one. If you were in the first 10 rows, you could hear Mark Few talking to him about that play there. I think just not the kind of game for them. They didn't play well against Seattle last time. Something about this matchup just doesn't really work for them. So Gonzaga just rolled heavily with Tyon and Fogle and Jalen in this game. I think just wanting a little bit more size on the perimeter since they didn't have a lot of size up front. Also a tough night for Braden Smith. I think that the new offense, which I say new, I don't know how much more Gonzaga will run this because we don't know if EK is going to miss any more games, but I think it benefits Mario much more than it benefits Smith. Smith seems to play better when he's able to feed the ball down to the bigs. He runs those side-to-side ball screen actions and gets that ball to Huff in that little kind of short mid-range push shot that he does. Smith's really good at that. Mario's not quite as good at that, but Mario is better at pick and roll actions where he's going downhill, where he's getting into those mid-range and hitting jumpers there. So this was just more of a Mario type game, and Mario stepped up and Smith just didn't really have a great game. I do wonder if EK is missing more than just one game here, or even if even when EK is on the bench, if we'll see more of Mario playing in those circumstances, because I think his skill sets match those small ball lineups a little bit better than Smith's do. Well, despite no front court, Gonzaga massively out-rebounded Seattle, and they didn't do that last time. We're going to talk about how they turned the tide on the glass in this game, some other stuff as well. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, including tonight, the championship, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. And here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Maybe you're riding out the favorite to win tonight when that team controls the matchup. Maybe you're taking a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset's coming, or you can build a parlay around the players and moments that you think will decide the game. Then you just apply that profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. Gonzaga's at minus 650 to win the WCC, helps them out that St. Mary's lost to Santa Clara. We'll talk about that to close out the show. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff boosts every game day. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still talking about Gonzaga's 21-point win over the Redhawks of Seattle University on Saturday night at Climate Pledge Arena. The Zags now 2-0 at Climate Pledge this year after not winning a single game there over the last 4 years. They beat UCLA back in mid-December. And now they get a win here over the Redhawks in what is a true road game for Gonzaga, at least according to the metrics, and a nice, comfortable 20-plus point victory. We had 5 pregame keys to victory that we wanted to talk about here. And some of them didn't end up becoming super relevant because Gonzaga changed so much of what they did in this game without having either EK or Huff. But we're still going to kind of talk about the ones that were relevant in this game. Key number 1 for Gonzaga was to get off to a hot start. Pretty much every game this calendar year, Gonzaga has not gotten off to a strong start. The lulls in those home games without the student section, we saw that against LMU. We saw it against Santa Clara. We certainly saw that in the home game against Seattle U. We saw it a little bit against Wazoo. They were down 5-0, but then they kind of quickly went on a 7-0 run. So it wasn't as bad in that game, but they were down 6-2 at the first media timeout of this game as well. They started the game 1 of 5 from the field. And again, it's a little bit different circumstance when you're coming into this game without your 2 best players and you're having to, I mean, not only just your 2 best players, but the players that you run your offense through. Like, you had to change the entire way that you run your offense in this game. So it's not a surprise that Gonzaga came out a little bit low, a little bit kind of disoriented offensively in this game. But to their credit, after a 6-2 start in favor of Seattle U, they then went on a 14-5 run to build a 16-11 run, and then ended up kind of coasting to a win, or coasting to a lead at halftime, an 8-point lead at halftime. Really slow start to the second half, albeit for both teams. Both teams combined to shoot 1 of 10 to begin the second half of the media timeout. Each team had only scored 2 points at the first media timeout. Seattle U on a field goal, Gonzaga on 2 free throws from Jalen Warley. That was it. Again, 1 made field goal between both teams at the under 16 media timeout of the second half. So slow starts in both halves, as I think the teams were kind of adjusting to each other and the new looks that they were giving each other. But ultimately, it didn't end up being a problem for Gonzaga. And the slow start, particularly at the beginning of the game, was understandable circumstantially. Key number 2 for Gonzaga in this game was my favorite key, which was more from the supporting cast. Well, they didn't have a choice. There had to be more from the supporting cast in this game because they did not have the leads. We talked about how in the first game, Graham EK, Braden Huff, and Ty Grant Foster combined to score 71 of Gonzaga's 80 points. That is 88.7% of Gonzaga's points came from those 3 players. In this game on Saturday, only 13% of Gonzaga's points came from those three players because, of course, two of those three players did not play. The other was Grant Foster. He scored 9. So 9 points out of Gonzaga's 71 points were scored by the same trio that scored 88% of their points in the first game. Obviously, this was a product of circumstance in many cases. But some of the guys who struggled in that first game struggled in this game. We mentioned Steele and Adam Miller. They combined to score 2 points in the first game. They scored just 3 points in this game. Two from Miller in game 1, 3 from Steele in game 2. Those guys still struggled. But Mario came back. Mario didn't score in the first game. He scored 20 in this game. That's a massive difference. Fogle didn't score. I think he played very little against Seattle U, so he didn't really have an opportunity to score in that game. But he didn't score. He scores 13 in this game. Warley didn't score in that first game against Seattle. He scored 14 in this game. Like a big, big difference from those guys in terms of what they were able to contribute. Again, a lot of that stems from simply just having more opportunities because of the absence of Huff and Ike and because the offense and the sets looked a little bit different. But again, Seattle's still a very good defensive team. And they still played good defense. Will Heimbrough blocked a couple of shots because he's the best shot blocker in the country. He swatted Ty and Grant Foster at the rim. He swatted Warley at the rim. Like, he's a good player. That is a good defensive team. And the guys who didn't play well in the first game, a lot of them stepped up and were very, very crucial to Gonzaga getting a win here. Key number 3 for Gonzaga was to be ready for those double and triple teams on the bigs down low. And again, this just was not a relevant thing. Seattle didn't really double or triple team because Gonzaga wasn't pounding the ball down low. When the ball was down low, like with Warley or Grant Foster, it was typically off of offensive rebounds. It wasn't getting passed down to them. It just wasn't happening in this game. There was a couple pick and rolls where they did get the ball to the roll man, but when that happened, there was an opportunity to double or triple teams. Like, again, the only way that happens is when the ball's thrown to EK or Huff and they're starting to make a move and kind of eyeing the defense. Those are when the doubles and triples come, and they just didn't happen in this game. Key number 4 for Gonzaga was to take better care of the basketball. They struggled with turnovers in the first game. They struggled with turnovers in this game as well. They had 6 in the first half, 15 overall, so 9 second half turnovers, a lot of them coming early in the second half where Gonzaga just really looked out of sorts coming out of the halftime locker room. 8 of them were steals by Seattle, so some of that is credit to Seattle, but some of it was just bad decision making. There was a couple of Braden Smith made a pass just directly to Braden Maldonado for Seattle. There was a time when Mario tried to make a pass to Steele that just flew straight out of bounds. There was a time that Steele was standing on the out of bounds when he caught a pass. Like, there was some just silly errors. Like, some of it is obviously adjusting to a new offense and trying to do things a little bit differently. Some of it, I think, was just making mental mistakes. 15 turnovers is not going to be sustainable going forward. It helped that Seattle U turned the ball over 18 times, and certainly helped that Gonzaga had a doubled up Seattle U in terms of points off turnovers. While Gonzaga had 15 turnovers, Seattle only had 11 points off turnovers, where Gonzaga had 22 points off of Seattle's 18 turnovers. But still definitely not exactly Gonzaga's strongest part of this game on Saturday night. And then key number 5, don't get beat on the glass. And again, if you had told me or anybody who follows this team that Gonzaga is going to get out-rebounded by 1 at home to Seattle University with their full team, and then they're going to play them 2 weeks later on the road without Graham Ike or Braden Huff, I'm not sure you would believe that they would out-rebound them. Maybe you would believe that they would have a small rebounding advantage, that they would find a way. Folks, Gonzaga out-rebounded Seattle by 20 in this game. 44 rebounds for Gonzaga, 24 rebounds for Seattle. Seattle wasn't missing anybody. Their same starting lineup was there. They had their same bigs. Huron Dan, who played a good game against Gonzaga in Spokane, still came off the bench for Seattle in this game, but he was great. He was the best player for Seattle in this game. I think he had 10 points. I don't think he missed a shot. He was a decent rebounder in this game, but this team Gonzaga just dominated on the glass. Dominated. Gonzaga ended up having 13 offensive rebounds in this game. It's not a huge number for them, but that's compared to just 6 for Seattle U. Limited Seattle U to 6 offensive rebounds on a game where Seattle missed so many shots. They missed 57% of the shots that they took. 57% of the shots that Seattle U took, they missed, and they only got 6 offensive rebounds. Really tremendous stuff. Ismaila Diagne was huge. Again, 8 rebounds in 20 minutes for him. Tyon had 9 rebounds in this game in 25 minutes. Warley and Fogle each had 6 rebounds. Really, really good stuff from Gonzaga on the glass. I cannot emphasize enough how incredible it was to see not only Gonzaga pick up a 21-point road win without their 2 best players. That in and of itself is impressive, especially against a team that, played so well against them last time. But to dominate this team on the glass after getting out-rebounded, there's not much more you could even say. An incredible team effort from everybody on this roster, 1 through 10, to go out there and get it done on the glass. I mean, rebounding is so much hustle. It's so much just outworking the dude next to you. And Gonzaga absolutely, unquestionably outworked their opponents on Saturday night. And that is a huge reason why they avoided what could have been a somewhat, I don't want to say justified, but understandable loss. And to turn that into a 20-point win, it's just a testament to how good and well coached and just how many, again, post-game press conference talking to Ismaila Diagne, the word that he kept saying was dog. We got dogs. Davis is a dog. Mario's a dog. This is a team full of dogs. And you could see that and how it played out on Saturday night at the Climate Pledge Arena. Well, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about Braden Huff's eligibility with his current injury situation. We got a pertinent question about Gonzaga's depth for our mailbag segment. We also got some discussion on the ESPN Plus broadcast that you all talked about extensively on social media. We'll get to all of that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, tax season, it doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax's full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take your taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Folks, Pint and a Pie at the Space Needle is the perfect pregame spot for all of your Seattle sports needs. After 4 p.m., the Space Needle's Pint and a Pie gives you the whole package. Entry, a savory or sweet tip-top pie, and a pint of beer, wine, or a non-alcoholic drink, all for just $35 per person. Pint and a Pie is your launch pad to game night. The Space Needle is Seattle's most iconic destination, not just for the views, but for everything fun. Rather than trying to cram into a crowded sports bar right before the game, why not enjoy a little space and a great view with your favorite beverage? Create a pregame story as iconic as the Space Needle itself. Look out over the city and look down at Climate Pledge Arena before you go inside. Whether it's date night, friend night, or you're just here for the deal of it all, come to take on the horizon. Only $35 per person, limited time offer, 21 plus only, ID required. Get tickets at spaceneedle.com, minimum 2 required. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're closing out the show with some mailbag questions here on this Monday edition of the podcast. First question here comes from Brandon via Gmail. Brandon says, I know it's hard to ever know what the NCAA will rule these days, but just curious if Braden is out 8 weeks or more, could this potentially give him another year of eligibility? Almost certainly not. Almost certainly not. That would be a absolutely stunning, shocking result. And I know people are thinking, well, the NCAA, yes, I get it. I understand the NCAA's inconsistency and the fact that they are getting sued and seemingly not able to win very many, if any, of the cases that are being filed against them. A medical red shirt typically happens if a player plays less than 25% of their team's games. Braden Huff has played 18 games for Gonzaga. The odds of him getting a redshirt season are astronomically low, to the point where I'm not sure Gonzaga would even apply for it, especially considering he's already redshirted in his career. It shouldn't really matter since that was not a medical redshirt, but he's played 18 games. If he had played half as many games, if he had played 9 games, I think the odds would still be pretty low. They'd be higher, but they would still be pretty low. But the fact that he's already played 18 games makes it extremely unlikely that he will get a medical red shirt from the NCAA, nor do I think that he would necessarily want one, although in this era when you can make so much money playing college basketball, perhaps he would go for one, but I don't think that it's going to happen. And that, again, and if he were to return at all, if he were to return for even a single game in like the WCC tournament, then the odds go to absolutely zero. There's zero chance he would get one at that point. If he doesn't play for the rest of the year, the odds are something like 1%. Next question comes from Adam via Gmail. This was a very pertinent question asked before we knew about Braden Huff's injury. It's important to note that that is when this question was submitted. Adam says, curious where you think Gonzaga's second lineup would place in the WCC. And he labels Gonzaga's second lineup as being Mario Venters, Grant Foster, Fogle, Warley, Diagne. And he says, is it fourth or fifth place? Fair, or would the lack of front court offense drop them to say seventh or eighth place? Well, my friend, we saw this lineup. We saw these six players and what they were able to do for Gonzaga in a game on Saturday against the sixth best team in the conference, according to Ken Pom. So his question was, would it be fourth or fifth, or would it be seventh or eighth? Well, they played number 6 and they beat him by 21 points on the road. So it ain't seventh or eighth. That's for darn sure. Honestly, I think this lineup, Diagne, Warley, Grant Foster, Fogle, Venters, Mario. If you're talking those 6 guys effectively in the rotation, yeah, I think it's. I don't even think it's fourth or fifth. I think it's third, maybe fourth. St. Mary's and Santa Clara would probably be consistently better than this lineup for Gonzaga, just because the size that those teams offer is probably enough to make it difficult for Gonzaga offensively in this game. And I don't think their defense would be as good as it was against Seattle U. But after that, like San Francisco's in that mix, but Pacific, no. Seattle, no. I mean, we already saw Seattle get beat by this team by 20. Wazoo, no. Like, I think this team is probably third, maybe fourth in the WCC without the starting lineup, because we already saw them do it without Graham and Braden in a game against one of those teams kind of right in the middle of the league. Next question comes from Jeff via Gmail. Jeff says, Santa Clara has good wins over Xavier and Minnesota, but also an awful loss to Loyola Chicago, while St. Mary's is something like 0-3 in quad 1 games. Where do these two teams stand in the at-large bid consideration? Yeah, so St. Mary's 0-2 in the quad 1, not 0-3. Doesn't really matter. Not a significant difference. They're 4-1 in quad 2 games, and then they're 12-0 in the other quad 3, quad 4. They're, as I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon, 32nd in the net. So they're in that at-large conversation. I will say they're getting a little closer to the bubble. The loss to Santa Clara definitely hurts. Now, it's a home or a road loss for St. Mary's, which makes it a little bit better. But at this point, St. Mary's, they have 2 more games against Gonzaga, and then they have a home game against Santa Clara left. I think you got to go 2-1. I think you got to go 2. If you go 1-2 in those games, if you beat Santa Clara and get swept by Gonzaga, or if you lose to Santa Clara and you split with Gonzaga, I don't know. I think at that point, you're kind of in the bubble conversation. I think St. Mary's is going to float right around that bubble by the end of the year, because they're not going to go 3-0 against Santa Clara and the 2 games against Gonzaga, knock on wood, but I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, they're going to, not likely, they're going to get Gonzaga without Braden Huff, but that game will be in Spokane on January 31st. The return game in Moraga will be February 28th. There's a chance that Huff is back for that game. We don't really know the extent right now. That's kind of right in the middle of that 4 to 8 week timeline that we were given. So it's hard to know. And the staff and the training staff don't know if he's going to be ready for that game either. They're not hoarding that information. They just don't know. But I think that St. Mary's is still going to have a hard time beating Gonzaga in Spokane, even without Braden Huff, assuming EK is at full strength for that game. I think St. Mary's is going to end up being right in the middle of the bubble for when Selection Sunday rolls around. As for Santa Clara, no, they would have to, if they swept, they already haven't swept. If they sweep St. Mary's and they beat Gonzaga in at the Levy Center, if they do those things, they're close. They're close. Basically, if they win every single game from now until the WCC championship game, which includes maybe another win over either Gonzaga or St. Mary's to get to the championship game and then a loss, that is maybe the only situation where I think St. Mary's ends up on the bubble. And even then, I think it would take it would take virtually no bid thieves. It would take a lot of other bubble teams crashing hard between now and March. I put Santa Clara's odds at making the NCAA tournament without getting an automatic bid at like 3 to 5%. I don't think it's happening. St. Mary's is much more closer, is closer to 50-50. Santa Clara is really not in that position. That loss, I mean, they have a quad 4 loss. It's a quad 4 loss to Loyola Chicago. A mid-major team with a quad 4 loss, they're just not getting an automatic bid or an at-large bid. It's just not happening. Like, it would be really, really surprising if that were to happen. And then this one wasn't really a question, but a couple of people brought this up to me about the concern, frustration with the ESPN Plus broadcast, and a lot of people saying, "Oh, I can't wait till we move to CBS. I can't wait till we're done with ESPN." I feel like I just want to clarify something about how these broadcasts work that maybe isn't super well known. And if somebody out there is listening and can maybe correct anything I say here, but this is my understanding of it. ESPN Plus is the platform where the games are shown, but ESPN is not broadcasting this game. Like, ESPN is not sending crews to Pepperdine, to San Diego, like if the game is on ESPN Plus, it is being produced by the local crew for that school. ESPN is not, they're not at these games. Like, your complaint with ESPN is not, it's not with ESPN. ESPN is just the platform that it is showing the stream on. That's the only thing that's happening. Case in point, if you've noticed, if you watch ESPN Plus games, they're a lot better when Gonzaga's at home than they are when Gonzaga's on the road. Everybody's complaints about this game or about the other games were for Pepperdine or for San Diego when Gonzaga was on the road, because those crews are, I don't want to say they're worse. Gonzaga's is great. Don't get me wrong. Shout out my boy, Stephen Carr, who does a lot of the work for them, the original host of Locked On Zags podcast, but they're probably much better staffed in Spokane than somewhere like Seattle, which just does not have the resources or the money to staff a big old production crew. I didn't watch this game on TV. I was in the house, so I don't know the extent of how bad it was. I've heard from many, many people. I know that it was horrendous. I know that it did not go well, but it was not ESPN's fault. And I'm not typically somebody to stand up here high and defend ESPN, but it wasn't their fault. They're just where the game is broadcast. That is the extent of their relationship with these broadcasts and how they happen. Having said all of that, Gonzaga's broadcasts will be better when they move into the Pac-12 for a handful of reasons. One, I think there will be less of Gonzaga's games that aren't on a network that is producing the games themselves. CBS and CBS Sports Network will produce the games themselves. USA Network and the CW, as far as I know, and I'm hoping to get some clarity. I'm hoping to get an interview over the summer as we get into the Pac-12 to kind of get some clarity on some of this stuff. But my understanding is the USA Network and the CW will also crew and produce these games in-house themselves. But then there will be other men's basketball games that are not on any of those three platforms. At this point, we don't know where those games will go. It is possible they do end up on ESPN Plus, but the Pac-12 enterprise is a media company that exists that will crew and produce these games. Any games that are not produced by CBS or by the CW or by USA Network will be crewed and produced by the Pac-12 enterprises, is my understanding. That means that road games at places, and again, there won't be super low resource schools like San Diego and Pepperdine and Seattle in the New Look Conference. Texas State, Fresno State, schools like that maybe are a bit lower resource will have Pac-12 enterprises helping to crew and produce those games. So the quality is going to improve. Even if they're on ESPN Plus and you're thinking, oh, great, here we go again, it's going to be better. It's not because ESPN figured it out. It's because the crews that are there producing the games are better. Again, if you're somebody in this industry, please let me know if I got anything incorrect about that, or if you have any additional context for me, because this is something that I'm kind of learning about on the fly. But I see a lot of people ascribing blame to ESPN as if they're the ones who are having all the technical issues, and that's just not the case. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. Be back with you on Tuesday's show talking AP and net results, and then we'll get you ready for Gonzaga's second and final game against the Pepperdine Waves on Wednesday. Thanks again. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.